The Man Who Took Notes, a story set in the Boring Man universe.
Meridian House was built to make important people feel larger than they were. Its main hall was a ring of white stone, black glass, gold pressure seals, and old gate metal that hummed when ships passed too close. Every seat had a history. Every balcony had a flag. Every door had 3 names, because one name was never enough for a place where treaties came to be born, strangled, and buried. William Forrest sat at the smallest table in the room. It was not really a table. It was a side shelf with legs. Someone had placed it between a support pillar and a ceremonial plant that had its own armed guard. William had been told the plant was a living witness, grown from the first peace vine of the Lethari Compact. He had asked whether the plant needed water or minutes. No one had answered. He looked young to the aliens in the room. His face was smooth, his hair was dark, and his hands had the steady patience of someone who had not yet learned to shake. Several delegates thought he was junior staff. One thought he was a translator's assistant. A military clerk from the Oran Protectorate asked whether the human was part of the furniture. William had smiled and said in a mild voice,
"I am attached to the Minor Observer Delegation. I am cheaper than furniture, and I complain less when someone puts documents on me, so I understand the confusion."
The clerk did not know whether that was an insult, so he left to find someone more important to hate. William opened his note slate. It was a plain black rectangle, small enough to fit in his palm, dull enough to be ignored, and protected enough that half the scientists in the hall would have wept if they knew what was inside it. To William, it was just his work tool. It kept time, tagged speakers, mapped sound, tracked translation delays, and made his handwriting look less like a tired spider had walked through ink. Barnabas spoke inside William's ear, in a voice that was polite, dry, and never as sorry as it sounded.
Contract timer has begun. Completion of the Meridian House observation assignment will move your private allocation request from deferred review to active review. Assuming you do not insult a hereditary minister, lose the note slate, start a war, or allow the ceremonial plant to die.
William did not move his lips. He had learned long ago that aliens became nervous when humans talked to things they could not see.
"I have no plans to kill the plant."
He thought through the silent contact in his cuff.
"I cannot promise anything about hereditary ministers, because some of them look very ready to insult themselves."
Your wife's projected satisfaction with the current progress remains high. Your mother-in-law's projected departure probability remains uncertain. The private retreat is still classified as resource-heavy, emotionally transparent, and suspiciously close to being a moon.
William adjusted his sleeve and kept his face calm.
"It is not a moon, Barnabas. It is a cultural residence with gardens, climate art, quiet water, and enough distance from Earth that my mother-in-law may finally stop reorganizing my kitchen."
Barnabas waited half a second before answering. For Barnabas, half a second was theater.
The allocation board may accept that description. I remain confident that Commander Lawson will call it a mother-in-law moon, because Commander Lawson enjoys accuracy when it causes you pain.
William touched the ring on his finger with his thumb. It was an old habit, older than anyone in the hall would guess. His wife had laughed when he accepted the assignment. His children had laughed harder. His grandchildren had sent design suggestions for the retreat, most of which involved rivers that flowed upward, trees that whispered secrets, and a door that only opened for people who brought snacks. His mother-in-law had not laughed. She had said the whole plan sounded unnecessary, which proved to William that it was vital. Across the hall, the summit began. The Lethari Compact arrived in silver robes and spoke as if every word had been polished by lawyers. The Oran Protectorate arrived in dark armor and stood as if chairs were a moral weakness. The Viscari-free systems arrived in plain coats, carrying too many folders and too little power. Around them moved guards, translators, aides, priests of legal memory, servants, envoys, and 3 kinds of official witness, including the plant. William wrote it all down. No one cared. That was why he noticed. At first, it was only a delay. The Lothari minister made a joke about Orun border discipline. It was not a good joke, but several Lothari delegates laughed at once. The translation came 2 breaths late. Then the Orun laughed, because their devices told them it was a joke. Then the Vescari smiled, because weaker powers learned to smile after everyone else. William marked the delay.
The translation lag was within local tolerance, but outside the pattern established over the first 7 minutes. Probable cause is manual review, buffer interference, or a translator developing sudden taste.
William did not smile. He wrote 1 word in the margin. Late. A young woman was watching him from the press balcony. She had copper-brown skin, wide dark eyes, and pale blue markings along her cheeks that shifted when she focused. Her jacket was cut in the bright green of independent media, which meant she was either brave, foolish, or too new to know which doors not to open. Her name tag said Stratana. William pretended not to notice her noticing him. That never worked on journalists. By the second recess, Stratana had found her way to the side of the ceremonial plant. The plant's guard tried to block her path. She smiled at him until he became confused about whether press access applied to roots. Then she stepped around him and leaned near William's little table. She said, with the warm confidence of someone who had practiced sounding harmless,
"You are the human observer. Unless the summit has hidden a second human somewhere more impressive. And I would like to ask why a being from a species that half this station thinks is myth spends a treaty crisis taking minutes beside a plant?"
William looked up from his notes. Up close, Stratana was younger than he had guessed. Not a child, not foolish, but still new enough to believe that truth could be chased down a hallway and caught by the sleeve. He liked that. He also distrusted it. He answered with the careful blandness of a man trained by centuries of forms, meetings, and family dinners.
I am here as an accredited procedural observer for a minor delegation. My task is to preserve a neutral record of the summit, and I sit beside the plant because the plant had more seniority than I did.
Stratana's cheek markings brightened.
That is the least useful answer I have received today, which makes it more honest than most. So I will ask a better question. Why would a human take a minor clerical assignment so far from human space?
William glanced down at his note slate. Barnabas did not speak, which meant Barnabas was enjoying himself.
The work pays well in allocation credit. The assignment was supposed to be quiet, and my family has a project under review that requires more resources than ordinary personal comfort.
Stratana's expression changed. Her eyes sharpened with sympathy he did not need.
So, humans have poverty after all. But you hide it under better words. And even one of your people must sell his time to earn a place for his family.
William looked at her for a moment. Then he laughed softly. Not at her, but at the size of the misunderstanding.
No, Stratana, ordinary human life is not priced like that. Food, shelter, health, travel, study, tools, music, a home, even a foolish amount of comfort are not the issue. The issue is that when a citizen asks for something very large, very personal, and very unnecessary, other citizens expect that person to do something useful before reality is rearranged for him.
Barnabas spoke in William's ear, but loud enough only for him.
Your project is best described as a resource-intensive, domestic evasive maneuver disguised as a gift of cultural and ecological enrichment.
William kept his face still with effort. Stritana tilted her head.
Your device just said something to you because your left eye tightened the way old admirals tighten before denying they have received orders.
William decided he liked her a little more. That was dangerous, but not illegal.
My assistant is unhelpful in ways that save time, and in this case it is reminding me that my private project is not important to the summit record.
Stritana leaned closer. Her voice softened, but it did not lose its edge.
I disagree, William Forrest. People reveal themselves by what they call unimportant, and I have never met anyone who crossed half a political region to take notes unless the notes, the payment, or the person waiting at home mattered more than he wished to admit.
William found that answer unfairly good. Before he could reply, a bell chimed across the hall. Delegates began returning to their seats. Stritana looked past him toward the Vescari section, where one chair remained empty. Her smile faded. She said in a lower voice,
Delegate Ralvin came through the east corridor before recess ended because I saw her argue with 2 Lithari aides near the service lift. But the public schedule now says she is delayed by illness and never entered the hall?
William looked at the empty chair. Then he looked at his notes. Delegate Ralvin had spoken 12 minutes earlier. She had objected to the change in inspection authority. William had written down her exact words. He marked another line. Absent after speaking. The summit resumed. The speeches were dull, which did not make them harmless. William had learned that the duller a political phrase sounded, the more likely someone had hidden a knife inside it. The main argument was about emergency gate authority. The Orin wanted the right to inspect ships along contested lanes. The Lithari wanted to supervise those inspections. The Vescari wanted refugees to pass without being searched until they starved. Everyone said they wanted stability. William had been around long enough to know that stability often meant the powerful wish to freeze the room while they stood in a good place. Then a clause changed. It happened inside a draft shown on the central glass. The old wording allowed temporary inspection authority during confirmed relay disruption. The new wording allowed continuing inspection authority during declared relay disruption. Most of the hall missed it because a Lithari minister was speaking. The Orun noticed only the word inspection. The Vescari noticed only that no one had asked them. William noticed because he was not important enough to be distracted.
The phrase has changed from temporary to continuing. That is not a clerical update. That is a transfer of power wearing a clerk's hat.
William wrote the old phrase, the new phrase, the time, and the name of the aide who had touched the drafting console. He also wrote the reaction of the Lithari security captain. The captain had not looked surprised. By the 3rd hour, William had 6 marks in the margin. By the 4th, he had 11. By the 5th, Stritana had sent him 3 silent notes through a press channel that was so badly hidden, he assumed the Lithari wanted it watched. Each note confirmed something the official record denied. Delegate Ralvin's staff had been removed from their rooms. A Vescari legal aide had vanished after asking for the original draft. A Lithari noble who supported peace had suddenly been called away for a family emergency that no family member could confirm. William tried to open a relay line to human liaison oversight. The channel blinked, searched, failed, returned, and offered him a polite delay notice that blamed local density, gate noise, and security traffic. All 3 reasons were possible. All 3 together were too convenient. Barnabas said,
I can release your notes to all local networks, trigger immediate public panic, cause emergency debate, and reduce the chance of a clean coup by approximately 48%. Side effects include riots, retaliatory arrests, possible Orun fleet movement, and a small but pleasing chance that several guilty officials are trampled.
William's fingers paused above the slate.
No public leak,
He thought.
not yet.
Barnabas answered,
You are once again choosing the slower option because it contains fewer dead aliens and more opportunities for paperwork to disappoint you.
William wrote another line. Security order drafted before trigger. During the next recess, Stratana returned. This time she did not bother pretending she had permission. She sat on the edge of William's side table, which made the ceremonial plant's guard look deeply offended. Stratana said with forced lightness,
Your face has become calm in the way people become calm when they have found something terrible and would rather not tell the nearest journalist, so I will save time by saying I already know something is wrong.
William did not look up.
You are a journalist, so you often believe that sentence, and every so often, history rewards you by making it true.
Her cheek markings flashed with amusement. Then she watched his hand, his ring, and the small distance he kept between them.
You are married.
She said, not sadly, not accusingly, but with interest. William looked up at last.
Yes,
He said, with the gentleness of someone who knew the word mattered.
and I love my wife, and I have children old enough to scold me with great skill, and grandchildren young enough to think I am more useful than wise.
Stratana smiled in a way that was not quite innocent.
My people do not treat affection as a single narrow road, William Forrest, and a person can honor one bond while still enjoying the warmth of another, especially during a dangerous summit where both people may soon be arrested.
William felt Barnabas become attentive. That was not a sound. It was more like the air inside his ear putting on glasses. William answered with care.
I like you, Stratana, and I am old enough to know that liking someone during danger can feel larger than it is, so I would prefer not to make a personal mess while several governments are already making a public one.
She did not seem offended. In fact, she seemed delighted. She leaned closer.
Then you should know that among my people, courtship is rarely a narrow pair bond, because a child is usually made by a circle of females joined to one male for one fast birth, and the circle shares duty, desire, status, memory, and blame.
For one shameful, ancient, animal second, William's mind did something very stupid. Barnabas did not let it pass.
Warning. Your pulse has increased due to a fantasy model that has not yet included kinship consequences, legal obligations, or the rapid arrival of senior female relatives.
William swallowed. Stratana, enjoying herself far too much, continued.
The circle is usually 12 females, sometimes more for old lines, and the child comes quickly, often within days, because long weakness was dangerous on our birth world.
Assuming standard recognition, your involvement would create 12 primary mothers-in-law, between 40 and 100 senior grandmothers-in-law, and a hostile cloud of aunt equivalents before the first week ended.
William's vision narrowed. Stratana blinked.
William Forrest, your color has changed.
William took a slow breath.
I am perfectly well.
He said, with great dignity.
I have only realized that your beautiful and respected culture contains a family mathematics that no married human man should approach without military support.
Stratana stared at him for half a second. Then she laughed so hard, the plant's guard told her to show respect to the witness vine. William marked another item in his notes, partly to steady his hand. Potential in-law threat. Severe. The relay to Commander Peter Lawson opened 13 minutes later. Lawson appeared on William's slate as a tired man with iron gray hair, hard eyes, and the expression of someone who had been interrupted in the middle of disliking breakfast. He wore a human military liaison jacket with no decorations showing. William knew that meant the real decorations were either classified or too annoying to explain. Lawson did not greet him.
Forrest, before you speak, I want you to understand that if this is about your mother-in-law, Moon, I am not helping you move that woman Frighten that woman, entertain that woman, or build waterfalls that flow sideways because your grandchildren think physics needs cheering up.
William kept his voice calm because Lawson enjoyed making people lose it.
Commander, it is not a moon. It is not currently about my mother-in-law. And I am contacting you because I have evidence of a coordinated procedural coup inside the Meridian House summit.
Lawson closed his eyes. His mouth moved once without sound. When he opened his eyes again, he looked older.
Of course you do. Of course the man trying to earn civic allocation for a domestic escape habitat has found a coup in the minutes. Because the universe hates my leave schedule and every human outside our lanes eventually becomes a local prophecy with shoes.
William gave him the short version, which still took several minutes, because the short version involved 11 contradictions, 1 missing delegate, 2 altered clauses, and a security order that had been written before the emergency had answered. Lawson listened without interrupting. That was how William knew he was worried. At the end, Lawson said,
Are you asking me for a fleet? Because the answer is no, unless this becomes extinction grade. And if you say extinction grade because a minister touched a draft clause, I will send a historian to slap you.
William shook his head.
No fleet. I am asking whether an authenticated record from a human observer counts as intervention if the record is used to stop local actors from falsifying their own law.
Lawson leaned back. Behind him, somewhere far away, a warning light passed over the wall and vanished.
That is the kind of question people ask right before I lose a week to hearings. A record is not intervention. What people do after reading it is where the trouble starts.
William said nothing. Lawson kept going.
You already know the rule, Forrest. We are not the police of the universe. We are not a court for every corrupt minister and frightened admiral. There are about 100 billion of us, which sounds like a lot, until you remember there are more galaxies than humans. And most of our people are home, in human space, raising children, arguing with gardens, pretending not to depend on Gaia, and doing things that are none of Meridian House's business.
William watched the hall while Lawson spoke. The Lothari security captain was changing the guard pattern. Lawson's voice grew harder.
When one of us acts in public, we do not just fix a problem. We become a story. Sometimes we become a cult. Sometimes we become a threat. Sometimes the people we helped spend the next 5 centuries asking why we did not help sooner. If you expose this, you expose it in a way that lets their own institutions stand up, or you will spend the rest of the century as the holy clerk of gate law.
Holy Clerk of Gate Law would increase your mother-in-law's interest in visiting the region, which may support the project goal if handled carefully.
William did not react.
I can use my notes as an index, not as authority. Their microphones, seals, translators, witness stones, memory vines, food logs, and door records can prove the facts without asking anyone to trust human technology.
Lawson stared at him. Then he sighed.
That is annoyingly responsible. Proceed if needed, stay alive if practical. Do not reveal classified capability, do not let anyone steal the slate, and do not let the journalist turn you into a saint unless she agrees to spell your name correctly.
William looked towards Tritana, who was arguing with a guard near the press gate.
I suspect she will spell it correctly. She seems dangerous in the way accurate people are dangerous.
Lawson pointed at him through the screen.
Forrest, if this ends with 3 governments asking humanity to certify their meeting minutes, I will personally rename your project the Mother-in-Law Solution in the permanent audit.
William spoke with more force than he intended.
It is not called that, Commander. And if the allocation board sees that phrase, my wife will laugh for a decade and my mother-in-law will somehow become chair of the review committee.
Lawson almost smiled. Almost.
Then take very good notes,
he said, and the line closed. The coup began 12 minutes later. It did not begin with gunfire. It began with a locked door, then another. Then all the public lights shifted from white to amber. The witness vine drew its leaves inward. Guards in Lithari gray moved to the hall exits, their plasma lances held across their chests. Orin officers stood. Veskari aides reached for files, as if paper could shield them. The Lithari Minister of Internal Order rose from his seat. His name was Averick Then, and he had spent the summit smiling like a knife in a silk drawer. He lifted one hand, and the central glass filled with the altered emergency clause. Averick Then said in a voice made for courts, crowds, and lies.
Under continuing inspection authority, during declared relay disruption, and in response to confirmed hostile manipulation by Orin agents and Veskari collaborators, emergency stewardship of Meridian House and its attached gate jurisdiction now transfers to the Lithari Stabilization Council until order is restored.
Several delegates shouted. The Oron commander reached for his sidearm and found 6 Lithari lances aimed at his chest. Veskari representatives were surrounded. Stratana was seized by 2 guards after trying to record the wrong face at the wrong time. William kept typing.
Local coup has entered visible phase. Survival recommendation is withdrawal under observer privilege, followed by sealed report. Ethical recommendation is unclear. Satisfying recommendation is to let the guilty parties be eaten by consequences.
William did not move. Averick Then continued.
The official record will show that this transfer was lawful, witnessed, and required by the criminal disorder of those who placed ambition above peace.
That was when William raised his hand. No one noticed. He kept it raised. A Veskari aide saw him first, then a guard, then Stratana, held between 2 Lithari officers, began to smile. The presiding officer, an old Lithari woman whose robes were heavy enough to slow a smaller species, looked at William as if she had just remembered the room contained weather. She said,
"The observer will remain silent while emergency authority is established."
William lowered his hand. He stood. His knees did not shake. That was good. His heart was beating faster than he liked. That was less good. He set the note slate flat on his palm and spoke into the hall's official audio field.
There is a small clerical concern, Honoured Chair, and because this summit has chosen to build emergency authority out of procedure, the concern cannot wait until after procedure has been used to arrest everyone who can object.
Averick Then turned slowly. His face did not change. That was impressive.
The human observer has no standing in this chamber beyond courtesy, and any foreign record he claims to possess is inadmissible under Meridian House emergency law.
William nodded.
I agree completely, Minister Thin. My record is foreign, my device is foreign, and asking this chamber to trust either would be an improper expansion of human influence over local law.
That made the room quieter than any threat could have done. Avarick's eyes narrowed. William continued.
My notes are not evidence. They are an index. They identify where this summit's own evidence has been altered, delayed, removed, or contradicted. If the chamber permits, I will name each point, and your own systems may confirm or deny me.
The old presiding officer stared at him. Then she looked at the central glass. She looked at the armed guards. She looked at the Orin commander, the Veskari delegates, the witness vine, and the minister who had moved too soon. She said with cold care,
The observer may state the clerical concern, because if emergency law cannot survive a clerk, then emergency law is already dead.
William began with the joke.
At first session, 9th minute, Minister Corvin of the Lothari Compact made a joke regarding Oran border discipline. The Lothari delegation laughed before the translation buffer released the line to the Oran channel. That alone is rude, but not treason. The delay matters because the same buffer later released legal language after local review, rather than before it.
The hall shifted. William did not rush. He read as if he were correcting inventory.
At first session, 23rd minute, Delegate Rolvan of the Vescari Free Systems objected to the phrase Temporary Inspection Authority. She was acknowledged by the chair, answered by Minister Then, and recorded by the East Acoustic Field. At second session, 2nd minute, the public schedule was changed to state that Delegate Rolvan was absent by illness and had not entered the hall.
A Vescari delegate rose halfway from his chair. A guard pushed him down. Too late. Everyone had heard.
At second session, 41st minute, the clause changed from Temporary Inspection Authority during confirmed relay disruption to Continuing Inspection Authority during declared relay disruption. The drafting console was touched by Lothari aide Seric Doma. The Lothari security captain reacted before the change was read aloud.
The security captain's jaw tightened. William moved to the next note.
At third session, 11th minute, a guard at the north door repeated the phrase hostile manipulation by Orun agents. That phrase had not yet been spoken in open session. It appears in the emergency declaration now presented by Minister Then.
The Orun commander stopped reaching for his weapon. Slowly, very slowly, he smiled. William did not.
At third session, 28th minute, a service order moved food staff away from Corridor 6. 3 minutes later, Delegate Ralvan's legal aide entered Corridor 6 and did not return. At third session, 34th minute, a security order authorizing detention of Vescari collaborators was drafted. At third session, 49th minute, the supposed evidence of Vescari collaboration was first announced.
Avaric Then raised his voice.
This is human fabrication, presented through a sealed device no one in this chamber can examine, and the observer's polite tone does not change the fact that he is interfering in sovereign procedure.
William looked at him fully for the first time.
I am the secretary, honored minister, and before you decide that is harmless, I should warn you that secretaries are where speeches go when they stop being air and become records.
Stritana laughed once from between the guards. One of them shook her. She lifted her chin and said with bright, reckless joy,
No, honored minister, he is not a soldier and not a spy. He is worse than either one right now, because he is the man who wrote it down while you thought truth was beneath you.
Avaric pointed at her.
Remove the journalist!
The old presiding officer struck the arm of her chair with a metal rod. The sound cut through the chamber.
No one leaves.
William looked down at his slate.
Your own systems can confirm every item. The East Acoustic Field heard Delegate Ralvan. The North Door seal logged the guard phrase. The drafting console logged Aide Doma's touch. The food order shows corridor clearing before detention. The witness fine should contain stress response during the clause change, unless someone wishes to accuse the plant of human bias.
Everyone looked at the plant. The plant's guard looked betrayed by reality. Barnabas spoke in William's ear.
I have never before seen a coup become vulnerable to shrubbery. This region may have hidden promise.
The presiding officer gave orders, not to William, to her own clerks, to her own archive keepers, to the handlers of the witness vine, to the door seal masters, the translator priests, the food service office, and the legal memory stone attendants. For 14 minutes, Meridian House became the most dangerous thing in politics, a bureaucracy that had realized someone lied to it. Then the second, then the third. By the 8th confirmation, the Lothari guards had lowered their lances. By the 10th, the Orun commander had sat back down because he understood that shooting anyone would only interrupt a better revenge. By the 12th, Averick then stood alone in a room full of institutions he had tried to own. The old presiding officer spoke with a voice that had lost its silk and found iron.
Minister Averick Then, by the laws you attempted to invoke, you are detained under emergency protection of the summit record, pending full review by all signatory powers.
Averick looked once at William. There was hate there, but also confusion. He still could not understand how a man at a side table had become the center of the room. William did not answer the look. He wrote down the detention time. The coup was over before the first shot was fired. The aftermath was worse. No one wanted to leave. Everyone wanted a copy of the record. No one wanted anyone else to have a copy of the record. The Orun wanted certification that they had been falsely accused. The Veskari wanted their missing people found before any more speeches happened. The Lethari wanted the matter sealed for regional stability. The press wanted everything yesterday, with names spelled correctly and blood, if possible. William wanted tea. Stratana wanted an interview. Barnabas wanted several people arrested more efficiently. The ceremonial plant wanted, according to its guard, respectful silence and filtered water. The old presiding officer called an emergency procedural session to decide how the emergency procedural session had been corrupted. William had to record that too. By the time Commander Lawson called again, William had been awake for too many hours and had learned that Lothari legal tradition required a formal apology to any recognized witness whose dignity had been harmed by false testimony. The witness vine was recognized. So was the chair. So, because of an old building code no one wanted to explain, was William's side table. Lawson appeared on the slate looking furious enough to power a small city.
Forrest, explain why 3 regional governments, 2 military blocs, 1 trade compact, a detained minister, and a journalist with no survival instinct are all asking whether humanity is now willing to certify their meeting minutes.
William rubbed his eyes.
I may have created confidence in the process, Commander, although I would argue that the process was already present and only needed someone to become unpopular enough to read it aloud.
Lawson leaned closer to his screen.
You created a religion around clerical work. I have a message here asking whether humans train sacred record keepers from birth. Another asking whether your note slate can bless treaty copies. And a third from someone offering asylum to the ceremonial plant.
William looked toward the plant. Its guard was polishing one of its leaves with great care.
The plant performed bravely.
Lawson pointed at him again.
That is exactly the kind of sentence that starts folklore. Stop helping the plant become a saint.
Stratana published her article 6 hours later. She called it The Man Who Took Notes. William read it only because Barnabas put it in front of him and refused to make the summary shorter. It was better than he feared. It did not say that a human had saved Meridian House. It did not say that humanity had judged the region. It said that powerful people had tried to steal the past one word at a time, and that they failed because one quiet man had respected the boring truth enough to keep it. It also described William as graceful, mysterious, and morally severe, which made him cough so hard that a Veskari medic offered assistance. Stratana found him after the article spread through the station. She wore the same green jacket, though one sleeve was torn from her arrest. Her cheek markings were bright with triumph and lack of sleep.
I made you sound more impressive than you are, less frightening than you could be, and much less handsome than my editor requested. So you should thank me before your commander blames me for the new clerical religion.
William set down his tea.
I am grateful for the restraint. I am also grateful that you did not mention our discussion of your people's family structure, because Commander Lawson would have made that worse than the coup.
Stritana smiled slowly.
My editor wanted a personal angle, and I considered writing that the mysterious human observer could face treason without fear, but nearly fainted when asked to imagine 12 mothers-in-law.
William closed his eyes.
Stritana, I beg you with all the dignity my species has left, do not publish that sentence while I still have living descendants who know how to read.
Barnabas spoke in his ear with perfect calm.
Your descendants have already received a rumor packet from Commander Lawson titled The Meridian In-Law Incident. Your wife has not yet responded, but projected laughter duration is severe.
William stared at nothing. Stritana watched his face and laughed softly, not cruelly.
You are a strange man, William Forrest. You are loyal, ancient, kind, afraid of relatives, and somehow more dangerous with a blank page than most admirals are with fleets.
William looked at the hall, where the next session was forming. Delegates stood in nervous groups. No one shouted now. No one joked near a translator. 3 aides had already approached William to correct minor statements before they became official.
I am not ancient by the standards that matter. I am not as kind as you think, and admirals are only dangerous in ways people understand. A blank page frightens guilty people because it has not yet agreed to forget.
Stritana's smile faded into something more serious.
Will you stay until the review is done?
William checked the session clock. Then he checked the allocation ledger, because he was human, tired, and still had a domestic problem waiting across the dark. Barnabas spoke before he could ask.
Due to successful completion of an undesirable diplomatic observation contract, prevention of regional escalation, preservation of local agency, and production of an audit-grade record under armed lockdown, your private allocation request has advanced from deferred review to priority absurdity.
William went still. Stritana leaned closer.
Is that good?
It depends how much of the proposal they approved.
So, Barnabas continued in the same dry tone.
The retreat has received provisional approval. The garden climate system has received partial approval. The waterfall has received conditional approval. The upward rain remains under aesthetic review. The anti-William privacy radius was rejected as emotionally transparent.
William covered his face with one hand. Stritana looked delighted.
What is an anti-William privacy radius?
William spoke into his palm.
It is not called that. It was never called that. It was a respectful personal space design included for the comfort of a difficult and beloved older relative.
The review board agreed with the word difficult, questioned the word comfort, and flagged beloved as legally sincere, but strategically strained.
Stritana was laughing again. William decided the universe had become unfairly crowded with people who enjoyed his suffering. Then the bell rang. The next session began. The old presiding officer returned to her chair. The Orun commander sat with his hands folded in plain sight. The Vescari delegates had brought 2 extra clerks and a rescued legal aid wrapped in a blanket. The Lafari seats were fewer now. The witness vine had been moved slightly closer to the center, where everyone could see it. William sat at his little side table. For the first time since the summit opened, every face in the room turned toward him. The presiding officer spoke with careful respect, and even more careful fear.
Observer Forrest, before this chamber resumes, the chair asks whether the procedural record is prepared to continue under neutral observation.
William opened a new page. It was empty, clean, and patient. He looked over the hall full of ministers, soldiers, clerks, spies, witnesses, cowards, survivors, and one journalist who was already writing the next history before the first one had cooled. Then William Forrest smiled politely and said,
Please proceed normally, honoured delegates. I will write down what is said, what is changed, what is delayed, and what everyone later discovers they should not have tried to hide.
No one proceeded normally. For the first time in the history of Meridian House, 3 empires, 7 protectorates, and 1 revolutionary journalist spent an entire diplomatic session telling the truth. Not because they had become better people, but because William Forrest had opened a new page.